Hi everyone. If you're joining me today, it's probably because you just got your LSAT score back and you're considering a retake. If you're retaking, you're not alone. Retaking is more common than ever before. And the reason is the LSAT's being offered more frequently than it used to be. And also, more importantly, law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest. So if you could do even just a point or two better, it's worth it. That could lead to thousands of dollars more in scholarship money or getting into a better law school or both. So if you're thinking about taking the LSAT a month from now or 3.5 months from now, that's fine. I'd say at this point in the cycle, you're probably best off applying this coming fall to start law school in 2020, but it's totally up to you, of course. Everyone has their own priorities and things to consider. Anyway, today I'm going to share with you 15 LSAT retake strategies in 15 minutes. Then I'll talk a bit about some resources that could help you, some schedules and courses, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. But I'm just going to go through these tips, these strategies pretty rapid fire. And yeah, if questions come up, feel free to throw them in the chat on the sidebar here, and then we can look at them afterwards. All right, so tip number 1, if you've done every prep test, that's okay, redo them. The value is not just to diagnose yourself, it's to better understand the questions. So if you're concerned you've done a question before, maybe a month ago, maybe a week ago, maybe a year ago, of course, you might remember to some extent. That's going to vary from person to person. It might lead to a slightly inflated score, but again, that does not matter. That is not the point. The value is to learn from your mistakes, to learn from what you didn't understand, and to improve for the next time. As for exams, you say you've done them all. How many are there? There are 86 numbered ones and several that are unnumbered. So you may not have actually done all of them as you think you might have. There's the 86 that are numbered. Then we've got a couple that are unnumbered. June 07, the SuperPrep original exams A, B, and C from February 96, 99, and 2000. Then you've got the new SuperPrep book, SuperPrep 2, which contains one previously unreleased exam, C2. Then there's also the official LSAT PrepTest with explanations, which is the old February 97 exam. These are available on Amazon. You can go check them out there. For extra practice, there are also the LSAT India exams. There are, I believe, 6 or 7 of those available online. I'll link to them in the description below. And basically, those exams are targeting the LSAT India market, where law school is an undergraduate degree, and for that reason, the exam's a little bit easier, and the questions only have 4 answer choices, not 5. So that will not perfectly replicate what your test will be like. Of course, it's not the actual LSAT, but that's the best you can do. What you don't want to do, and this brings me to number 3, avoid fake practice tests like the plague. If a book does not say the prep test number, if it doesn't give you the date that it was administered, it's not a real LSAT question. You want to steer clear of these. They often contain mistakes. They're not realistic, not worth your time. You're much better off redoing exams you've done before than going out on a limb to these fake questions. There are some books on Amazon that have a suspiciously high number of reviews that also don't use fake LSAT questions, and so I highly recommend steering clear of those. Let's talk a bit about IDing your weaknesses. First strategy related to this, number 4, even if the exam is unreleased, that doesn't matter. Look at the most 3 to 5 recent exams you've taken, and those will be the best indication of where you stand. Number 5, don't look at just the questions you get wrong. Also look at everything you have difficulty with. If you're down to 2 choices and you guess, but you got it right, you were just lucky. It could have just as easily have gone the other way. So make sure you review those as well in terms of trying to analyze what your weak areas are. And finally, number 6, diagnose where exactly the problem is in your misunderstanding with the question. What is your weakness? Is your weakness the stimulus, the method of reasoning, if we're talking logical reasoning? Is it in the question stem in terms of what question type you're dealing with? Or is it in the answer choices? You have to figure out which exact area your mistakes are coming from. The test makers have an entire bag of tricks, maybe 1,000 tricks, and you're only falling for certain of those tricks. And so that brings me to number 7, the review process. Out of those 1,000 tricks the test makers might use, which ones are you uniquely prone to falling for? there are patterns in the kinds of traps they lay for you. There are traps of encouragement to lure you towards wrong answer choices, and there are traps of discouragement to push you away from the correct answer. And so you want to see, are you falling for a trap of encouragement towards a wrong answer or a trap of discouragement away from a right answer? And try to analyze those patterns, because the same things come up again and again and again. For example, a lot of times for a necessary assumption question, they will include a very tempting wrong answer that is a sufficient assumption when that's not what they were asking for. So it's like it's the right answer to the wrong question. Now, for number 8, let's think about what you're going to do differently this time around. If you didn't have a strict study schedule, consider that. If you didn't arm yourself with the best resources possible, considering investing a bit more in this. So maybe you're going to want to do a course, or you're going to want to hire an instructor, a private one-on-one coach. These are all things to consider. Or maybe you just got to change your work schedule. If you've been working long hours, late nights as, let's say, a paralegal, maybe it's time to dial it down a bit at work. Maybe you want to tell your boss you're taking the LSAT, maybe you don't. But either way, you want to find a way that you can carve out the time, maybe before work, during lunch, after work, or if you're in school, maybe you want to lighten your course load a bit this time around. What you don't want to do this time around is just keep reading random free stuff and using forums if that's been your approach so far. And that brings me to number 9, study schedules. If you didn't take time to learn the basics before, you want to start there properly, building the foundation first. My day-by-day study plans help you do this, but we'll talk more about those later. Number 10, if you did learn the basics already, you want to ID your weak areas, as I discussed previously, and focus on those. On top of that, mix in a timed exam or 2 per week. Don't stress about the specifics too much though. Whether it's timed sections, questions by type, timed exams, doesn't matter. It's all good practice. Number 11, with scheduling, we've got 1 month till March at the moment. If you've got the time, go for that. Otherwise, you've got 3.5 months until June. Try to be done by June if you can, because the digital LSAT is starting in July. Number 12, digital LSAT. The digital LSAT is starting in July. Half of test takers will get the paper and pencil format, half will get the digital format. LSAC chooses for you, and you don't get any advance notice. So if I were you, I wouldn't want to be in that situation with all the ambiguity. The benefit, though, is that they will let you see your score before you decide whether to cancel. That's a unique one-time opportunity just for the July LSAT. So if that speaks to you, maybe you want to consider that. Otherwise, there's June, paper and pencil, guaranteed, and September, digital, guaranteed. And then, of course, beyond that, it's going to be digital as well. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the digital LSAT as it currently exists. The interface is a bit clunky in some ways. And my biggest pet peeves of all are that you cannot draw freehand on the tablet, on the screen. You are limited to LSAC's interface with underlining and highlighting, etc., but it's fairly restricted, not the best in my opinion. The other thing is that there's a countdown clock, and at the 5-minute warning, you cannot remove the countdown clock, which I personally would find a bit stress-inducing. So again, maybe you want to steer clear of that. Get the LSAT done by March or June if you can. Of course, if you got to go digital, we'll make the best of it. Number 13, I want to talk now about taking your LSAT prep to the next level. You can consider writing your own LSAT questions, writing your own answer choices, writing your own games. This sort of providing your own bonus material to supplement actual LSAT problems can help you better understand the exam from the test maker's perspective. Number 14, another way to next level up your prep is to try explaining things to a friend. If you cannot articulate it, put it in your own words and help someone else understand it better. Maybe you don't understand it well enough. Which brings me to number 15, finally. If you don't have someone to talk to about this, nobody cares, nobody's interested, I get that. I have that problem in my life as well, which is why I do what I do. You could write out your own thought process, write out your own explanations. I actually have an example of this written by a student that I'll share with you now. Here's a quick screenshot of it. It's from the June 07 exam, and I have a full video where I walk through this in more depth. I'm linking it below this one. If you're looking for something even more in depth, then you may also want to consider looking at my LSAT explanations, where I walk through full explanations of why the right answer is right, why the wrong answer choices are wrong for all 5 answer choices, and of course, talking about the stimulus and the question type as well. So I'm including a link to those explanations below this video as well. Anyway, that's it. 15 LSAT retake strategies in what turned out to be much less than 15 minutes. Feel free to reach out if you need anything at all, any questions at all about your prep. I love hearing from students. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.